Yeah, so I think, as I said, I think, well, I think back to some of the early programs. I can remember we started one program at one school. Um, there were probably 25 kids in the sports hall, or old. I think it was a very old style gymnasium. Um, week two we had about 10. By week four we had about 4. And in all fairness, those 4 were very consistent. They were there all the time. But within 3 weeks we lost a huge amount of kids.
That's been overtraining them, eh?
I think we were just nowhere near getting them engaged in a way that kids need to be. It was just too static, very very structured, very technically focused around the basic movements. And whilst that is effective, I think we've got to remember that they're kids, and if we don't engage and motivate them to train, then it doesn't matter how good that program is and how good your knowledge is. You don't get to deliver it because they're not there.
How did you get around that?
Well, that one died of death, so we didn't get asked back on that one. And then we just started to evolve. I just started to evolve what we were doing, and as I say, we probably made quite a few of those mistakes. I mean, I think some of the programs where we were in more of the a typical gym environment, where we were teaching kids with training barbells of like 5-7 kilos, whatever, 5 to 7 kilos, something like that. They were engaged in that. They do engage in the technical side of that. But when you're working in a facility where it is just a space, sometimes they don't see the relevance of what you're doing. And I think at that time, I probably did a really bad job of explaining why we're doing stuff. We just kind of did it, and there was, and I think starting with why is probably the most important thing. You're doing this exercise because it's going to it's going to make you stronger and more powerful, which means you're going to be able to put more force in the ground, to run faster, decelerate quicker, change direction. You're going to be more resistant to injury. Talking about all those things and having that conversation is super important. Now what start to do is think more in lines of motivational science, theories of self-determination, where we look at autonomy and choice. We look at relatedness and the relationships that they have between not only the content and them and their sport, but also the way that the athlete-coach relationship develops, and taking an interest in them and being interested in what they're doing, not just in their sport, but what they're getting up to outside of that, and how they're feeling about stuff, and that kind of thing can be much more engaging, and also changing things. So we might start with a bodyweight squat, but then we have a very visible and level-based system now that so we can say to them, like, right, and they're like, oh, why do I do a bodyweight squat? Why are they doing a front squat? Or why have I got to start here? And it's being able to explain now, these things take time. We've got to make sure the movements are right. But having that sort of open dialogue and visible system is a huge part of getting buy-in, I find, at the bottom levels now.
So what are some of the challenges that you're facing, or the hurdles you've got to overcome at the moment?
I think, like I said to you, I think the main thing at the moment is a time thing, and that's not necessarily. We've got a ton of time to train kids. It's more the time managing the workload around the other commitments that come with being a PE teacher. That's probably the major challenges. I think aside from that, it's, like I said, continuing to develop the monitoring system. I think if we're talking about the challenges of working with the younger groups, I think we have to continue to strive to bring good coaches in to support the program, offering students the opportunity to develop interns, in order to kind of give the kids a better coaching ratio. And I think that's one of our one of our challenges because of the numbers that we do get through on the programme. It's quite difficult to manage the quality if there's me and 30 kids on my own. It's, that's the structure of the sessions we have to change quite considerably to make them safe and effective to the way that we can do it at the moment with 5 of us delivering on parts of the programme. So I think sure that we can keep that coach to athlete ratio down is one of our major challenges over the next 6 months, and then just continuing to make the programme better. That's the big thing, and we're pushing towards rolling it out further into our core physical education curriculum. How we do that, and upskilling staff and making sure that they're aware of the requirements to do that is another challenge that we'll face in the coming months. But the other members of staff are fantastic. They've really bought in and they understand what we're trying to do. Then it's just making sure that we're doing all that and we can get continuity and the same outcomes across the board, really, and it not dependent on 1 or 2 people running it to make it work and deliver to all the kids.
So in terms of people coaching youth athletes, what sort of advice would you give off the back of your experience, or what kind of issues, or so any kind of tips you would give people coaching youth athletes?
I think the main thing is make it fun. Don't forget that they are kids at the end of the day. Having made those mistakes in the early stages where it was very rigid and very structured from a young age, I think looking beyond traditional strength and conditioning to good old fashioned PE is fun. There can be some really fun elements in there, and I think looking at those things and trying to engage them and looking at different activities and rather than trying to see, looking at strength and conditioning in terms of plyometric strength and speed and things like that, and saying, right, well, we need to do it in this really structured manner. I think what I've started to do now is look at games, look at things we used to do when we were kids, and think about, actually what movements and components of fitness underpin those games, and can we use those games to engage and achieve the outcomes that we want? Can we play a game of Bulldogs and use that as a means to developing, cutting and reading, the perceptual cognitive side of agility and that sort of thing. So I think thinking about it in those kind of ways, I'd start to look at ways you can achieve the outcomes that you want through different means away from just the purely structured SC stuff. I mean, one of the best things we've done in the last 3 months is Ninja Warrior. We created a Ninja Warrior course, and kids were on the monkey bars, swinging on ropes, jumping off boxes, climbing up walls, and all sorts of stuff, and they absolutely loved it. And then if you look at it, you can put conditions on that around jumping and the way that they jump, and start to develop, your 2-footed jump, your 1-footed jump, your leap, your hop. So there's a ton of things you can do if you're creative, and that would be my advice: is get creative, allow them to have some fun, let them be kids, and then they'll stay engaged and hopefully continue to progress up to the programme levels where you can start to really drive them forward from a physical perspective, but you've set them with a strong foundation and a broad base of movement for them to really kick on.
So in terms of books or resources, is there any kind of thing you're reading recently, or anything that strikes a chord in your head in terms of kind of key things or key topics that you've read up on recently, or anyone in particular, any books or resources that you think that's worth the read?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think the one I'm probably going to and from most at the moment is David Joyce's High Performance Training for Sport. I think there's some superb superb chapters in there, very applied, and some. I love the little wisdom bits in there, which is just kind of like the knowledge that they've obviously got from doing this stuff over and over again, and sharing those nuggets, I think is priceless. So I think those guys. I think it was Dan Lewindon was involved in that one as well. I think that book's fantastic. Go-to resource for me.
It's a bit of strength and conditioning as well, isn't it?
It is. It's phenomenal. And what was the chapter I went to last? Darcy Norman's chapter on developing endurance. Just fantastic, and it's the kind of thing you want to be reading. Other than that, I think a couple of things. Obviously, Rodri Wood's textbook. If you're looking at it from a what we should be doing from a young athlete's perspective, I think that's a super resource. Probably credit John Oliver in that one as well. Sorry, John.
They tend to come hand in hand, Rodri and John, don't they?
Yeah, and that book is, and along with the YPD model and various other things, I think they are, they've done a fantastic job in helping define what we can do. And I'd certainly that book's very dog-eared and annotated and sticky labels hanging out of various pages to.
Someone somewhere has mine, so if they're listening, I want it back. But I've had to borrow our colleagues and read it for the second time.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So yeah, those in terms of books. Obviously, resource-wise, love the podcast. I think there's some great podcasts out there now with Rob Pacey does a fantastic job. Rob's a good friend of mine that I've met through social media, and we chat and talk over ideas, and he does a super job. You get some great guys on there, so I think his resource for anyone who is traveling, or if like me, anytime I'm doing DIY or anything boring, I usually have a podcast on in the background. And I know there's some other good podcasts out there at the moment as well. I know Matt Dickens has got one. He's got some great guys on there recently, like Pete Knight and Alex Wolf. So I think that we're in an age where there's a ton of information, and some guys that are putting themselves out there to do a great job. I'm big on the video resources as well. I love the video resources. I like seeing what other guys are doing. Two that have had a big impact on what we do. Nick Winkleman's 10th of a second difference through Exos, fantastic in terms of the linear speed development. And then if you haven't heard of him or seen him, I think checking out Lee Taft's speed development, multi-directional speed development stuff, guy's phenomenal. I think he's got a brilliant way of making it simple and breaking stuff down. So they're all resources that have had a real big impact on what we do within the system at the school. So I definitely recommend checking any of those out. Sorry, that might be a bit longer list, but they're all worth a mention.
So,
and I probably missed some really good stuff as well.
Yeah, that's always, you always think about these things after. I should mention that.
Yeah.
I came across an absolute cracker the other day. It was a 3-part series college done from a presentation in November last year. It was Porty Roche doing it's an hour and a half of content, basically his whole seminar on strength and conditioning for youth athletes. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Free resource.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I can pick it up. It's free on YouTube. So just YouTube Porty Roche. I've stick a sack on my blog as well. But I came across it by accident and thought this is brilliant. Yeah,
I should probably say as well. Actually, just another one that's cropped up. Coaching Matters. Cy Nameby does a really great summary every month of all sorts of stuff. A really broad base of resources. He does a great job. Paulie Roach actually was a name that we've had thrown at us from people to say, we need to get him in the next Charter Champion. So need to reach out and have a chat maybe.
Finally, I had an interview at Arsenal probably 2 years ago or something, which I completely cocked up.
Yeah.
Just had like a brain freeze. So not my finest hour was in front of Porty Roche and Des Ryan. It's one of those things that will stay with me. But hopefully get a chance to rectify that in the future.
Yeah.
So in terms of the next sort of 12 months plus, what's next for James Baker and Proformance?
Well, as I said, I think continuing to develop the EPP and make that better and iron out the creases that we feel that we've got at the moment. Proformance, we're heading out to the Eccentric Summit in May 20th and 21st in Stockholm. Both Mike and I will be there. I think we're probably both going to end up presenting something from very different ends of the spectrum. We do some work. We've been doing some stuff with the guys out in Sweden. Some really good guys out there, and so we're heading out there. So we'll be there in May, and then the week after we've got High Performance Athletic Development, which is a clinic we're running at Athletic Lab in North Carolina. So we'll be heading out there. I'll be out there for just under a week, I think. And so Mike's assembled some kind of superstar lineup, headed up by Bush Exner.
Yeah, I saw that.
So Mike just emailed the overviews over to me, and I was like, I'm just going to have to book my ticket now. I'm going to upset my wife again. But yeah, we're just going to, we're heading out there to check that out and hang around at Athletic Lab for a few days and see how they do things and chat coaches and maybe see a couple of sites around there. So that's the next month or so. We've got that going on, and then I like to take a little bit of downtime in the summer when my school holidays come round. Don't do too much in that time. Spend some time with the kids.
Sounds like you need it.
Yeah, I'm definitely at that point at the moment where we're counting down a little bit of time. And then it's just continuing to build a network really off the back of those two events. We're hoping to make both of them annual events. So one in the US, one in the UK.
Fantastic.
So I'd imagine within the next, I think what we'll probably try and do is get Charter Champions set a little bit earlier this time, so we're not quite rushing as much on a few fronts now that we know that's definitely what we want to do. So so keep striving on. A few more webinars probably as well. Got to catch up with a couple of guys we've spoken to previously, so we'll be pushing on all fronts.
Brilliant. So lastly, where people find out more about you, about Proformance, about some of the resources, where can they find you and follow you?
Twitter, pretty active on Twitter. We've got my Twitter handles at Proformance Team, and then we've got the website Proformance, which is www.proformance.pro. .com was gone, so to jump on what we could, and my email and contact details are all on the site if people want to get in touch and have a chat. I'm always happy to discuss ideas and other things.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. I know we went on a little bit longer than planned, but brilliant to have you on, and best of luck with the next few months.
Cheers, Rob. Appreciate it. Cheers.
I hope to speak soon. We'll link up a few bits and pieces, links to the site, etc., and probably a UK SCA article as well, if I can get hold of a link that'll work for that, so people can have a bit of a read.
Yeah, for sure. I can ping that. I can ping the article across. It's no problem. I think it possibly is on the site already, but you're welcome to check that out.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Cheers, Rob.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.